Hello, good evening, and welcome back. So, Sally Challen, the abused wife, is entitled to killed husband's estate. This is a so-called manslaughter charge, as the charges have changed over the years, back from 2011. For those who aren't aware of the case, I'll give you a quick rundown from Sky News. This is a situation of which there was a large age difference, and they found each other when she was only 15 years of age. They've been together for about 4 decades and married for 31 years. And during that time, they've had 2 children, 2 sons, as it happens. And they've said that he was very controlling. The husband, the father, was very controlling. He dictated where she could go, what she could do, that kind of thing. There are allegations of rape from him as well, and dragging her down the stairs. These are solely from her. These are not actually corroborated allegations. But, as always, when it comes to a relationship, you can never be sure, because, of course, there's only 2 people involved, and therefore one will cast accusations against the other, either because they're true, and they're trying to get out of it and stop retribution from their partner, because they want them kept locked up so that they can't come back at them, or because of some other reason that they're unhappy with them, and therefore they want an excuse for the way that they've acted. Obviously, family court lawyers suggest to the estranged wives to suggest some sort of sexual misconduct in relation to the children or to the wife in order to allow the woman to get more alimony, more money from the man, and more custody of the children. They recommend that because that is quite an easy way out, and because the man is normally away providing for the family, it is easier for the woman to persuade the children that the man is the bad person, because of course he's away, which means he clearly doesn't care about the family because he's not there. Let's ignore the fact that he is instead providing for them and actually is the encouraging disciplinarian that everybody needs in their life, and the father figure is that vital, and that's why daddy issues are so frequent now. But ignoring that, of course, with young gullible minds, as children tend to be, that as the mother, of course, who is the sympathetic, the empathetic, the compassionate one, if they're telling the children that the dad is such a bad person, the child doesn't think, well, why were you with him in the first place, and why are you still with him, and why did you marry him, and why have you got children with him? Instead, they just think, oh, mummy's saying it, so it must be correct, and they believe this for so long that by the time they have critical thinking skills, it is too late for them to question the assumptions because they're so ingrained. So in this particular case, it overflowed to the point of manslaughter, alleged manslaughter. In fact, that has been the final decision. It is manslaughter. So it would have been alleged murder, as that was the original charge back in 2011. So, why was this? Well, as the Financial Times puts it, that they don't beat around the bush. They are actually honest in saying that men and women get different sentences on the basis of gender. That is the entire fact. We know that already from various studies and empirical evidence, which shows that judges are more lenient on women because they are women. And as they go on to say here, it is exactly the same. That she kills her husband, but is given a lesser sentence because she's a woman. It is appealed, of course, and reduced even further. And luckily for her, a new law was created in 2015, which means that she's now been released and, of course, enabled to inherit that £1 million home, which should have gone to her sons otherwise. So the particular point from the Financial Times that is worth mentioning is that they had been separated. It seems that she'd had enough of a love-hate relationship. They'd separated. They realised that they weren't right for each other. She and her sons, particularly David, suggest that the father, the husband, was very controlling and coercive and wouldn't allow Sally to live her own life. In which case, of course, well, hey, it's best that they separate. Why not? There isn't any evidence that I've found that requires her to stay. He isn't forcing her to stay. So what he's doing is as yet unknown, of course, and will never be known because now he's dead and has been for almost a decade. But once they broke up, they were separated, and he moved on. He was able to find somebody else. Now, of course, if somebody is so controlling and psychopathic or sociopathic, it's unlikely that they would be able to find somebody else to then form a relationship with. Meanwhile, the other party, in this case Sally, wasn't able to find anybody else, and in police interviews she stated, "I didn't want anyone else to have him if I couldn't have him," which doesn't quite sound like the murmurings of a sane person or somebody who is well adjusted and is the victim, unless you're going for Stockholm Syndrome, in which case it would be love and adoration for the captors and not murderous intent. And I mentioned murderous intent, not manslaughter, because, as the Financial Times reported, she had also brought the hammer, which she used to hit him 20 times and kill him, saying candidly that whether she used it depended on how the conversation panned out. So it wasn't as if she found something, was trying to defend herself, and he attacked her. No, instead of that, as Sky News mentioned, that they were having breakfast, and of course that he mentioned that he had no intention of getting back with her. He'd found somebody else. They were doing just fine, and he didn't want to get back together with her. Instead, she decided to hit him 20 times with a hammer. Why was he not defending himself during this time? Who knows? He was 61 at the time, and she was 9 years younger, I believe. But still, middle to old age people, you'd hope some more of a equal footing. Almost as if she caught him by surprise and it was premeditated. Funny that. So, as they say, Sally was convicted of murder in 2011 for 22 years and handed down a 22-year sentence. She was given leave to appeal in March 2018. In the interim, coercive control had become a criminal offence. What coercive control means, essentially, is that if the so-called abuser had been trying to, of course, coerce, as they say, particular actions through threats, physical abuse, emotional abuse, any sort of psychological torment, then the person who was tormented or abused would not be held so responsible for their actions. This was passed in March 2015, and therefore it was applied retroactively to her case. To say, yes, I know it's 4 years later, and that she was sentenced at the time with the law that was in place, but since then we have changed the law, and therefore this new law should be applied retroactively. We shouldn't be holding her to the standard of which was the standard at the time she committed the crime. Instead, we should find the most lenient version and apply that to her instead. And on top of that, and this is so painful, but we see it always. So I'm just picking on her because everybody should be pointed out to us like this, and I've got time for her this evening, so I'm going to focus on Sally Challen. So, sorry, because of the 9 years she'd spent, well, almost anyway, after many cases for appeal, she'd finally won it to be reviewed. And in that review, they decided that coercive control was actually what should be used in application of the law here. But on top of that wasn't enough, because as they say here, for a woman who hit her husband 20 times with a hammer after they were already separated and he'd moved on and been able to find a relationship with somebody else, that he says The lesser charge was accepted on the grounds of diminished responsibility after a psychiatric report concluded Mrs. Challen was suffering from an adjustment disorder. Mr. Justice Edis said the killing came after years of controlling, isolating, and humiliating contact, with the added provocation of her husband's serial multiple infidelity. And the best bit, the absolute best bit, he imposed a new sentence of 9 years and 4 months for manslaughter. Okay, yeah, she accidentally killed him by hitting him 20 times with a hammer, but concluded that she had already served her time. So, yeah, how can we make this convenient for her that means that she's already served her time? Oh, that's fantastic. And of course it gets better as we get to the headline of which I open this video with, that instead of the estate, the £1 million estate, as Sky News reports here, their £1 million Surrey home, that instead of it going to the two sons, the children, it's gone to her instead. Because, well, why not? Why wouldn't it go to the woman instead of the children? Why shouldn't it go to the person who's killed the person that they're now inheriting it from? And it is so misleading. As they mention here, that Sally Challen, 65, was found guilty of murdering 61-year-old Richard and jailed for life in 2011. But that's not their ages now, is it? She's 65 now, but Richard wouldn't be 61 now. So why are you suggesting that she was 65 at the time? Because she wasn't. Because, of course, if we look through the Sky report instead and look back through the history of their relationship, we'll find that, of course, it started from an early age, and that's why they can be there for decades. So as they mention here, it was the 56-year-old that killed her 61-year-old husband. Why would you even lie about something as straightforward as age? What is the BBC trying to prove here? That all women are angels and all men are evil? Why? It's ridiculous. When you get to fake news of this level, why would you point out something that is so inherently misleading and false and so easy to point out? And it's one of those things that then calls into thought of, well, what else are you trying to hide? Why would you be hiding this if you're not hiding anything else? How would we possibly know? But, of course, Judge Paul Matthews has now ruled that Mrs. Challen can inherit his estate. He concluded that a rule barring people who kill from inheriting their victim's estate should be waived in Mrs. Challen's case. Yes, of course. Their rule, which is a softer way of saying law and law of the land, and actually abiding by the standard of which we have to try and have a civilized society, that should be waived, because, hey, she's a blonde woman, don't you know? I mean, clearly, you've got to have sympathy. Now she's old as well. I mean, God, you've got to be inhumane to actually hold her accountable for her own actions and treat her as an individual who knows what she's doing. That wouldn't be fair, would it? And what would it gain from having her in prison? Well, it seems like you're now questioning the entire prison system. By all means do so, but this seems like an odd one to bring it up on. If you wish to go into prison reform, then please do, but why would you pick this OAP white blonde woman, not grey by now, as your flag bearer in order to try and change this? Of course you wouldn't. It's all about the little victories. It's all about yet another example of saying that, new laws, even under a conservative government, are going to be created in order to, supposedly, protect women from domestic violence. Even though domestic violence is not a gendered issue. In fact, women are more likely than men to use weapons. You know why? Because men and women are different. And actually, they have different biology, so men are stronger. So women use weapons to even the playing field. And that's the fact of it. And yet women still get shorter sentences for the same crimes. And apparently here, they get paid £1 million as well from the person that they killed. That is the state of British law. But apparently, this man was so evil, so coercive, so abusive, despite, they're going to lie about her age, so seeing as they don't include any evidence of abuse whatsoever, and numerous searches bringing up nothing other than an allegation of rape and dragging down the stairs, it seems like that's very much just between the two of them, and we don't have any evidence of that happening. And it was just one mention, almost as if it didn't happen, seeing as we have no corroborating evidence. And yet, favour the woman, as is always done. When will feminists admit that they've won, and in winning they've gone too far, because they have fucked things over? And as we see divorce rates sustaining, marriage rates decreasing, and MGTOW on the up and up, surely, soon, you're gonna have to notice that if things keep up this way, and men know that they're getting a really raw deal, with so many not agreeing with religion anymore, and if there's no religious basis for marriage, then what is it? It's just a contract, it's a business agreement which brings the government into your bedroom. What's the point? What's the point? The man is signing away his life. For what? What does he get in return? Nothing. Other than maybe making the woman feel a little bit better, but there's no need for that. You can always hold off on marriage if you want, like Patrice O'Neill did. You can always do that. Except then, of course, they're going to be living with you, and therefore they're going to be entitled to half your stuff because you were basically married, or even if you were just in a relationship because your friends or her friends said that you were in a relationship, in which case you're still entitled to your stuff. Oh, in that case, get a prenup, except as we've seen in Australia, where that meant nothing because apparently she wasn't in the right state of mind, because who would agree to such a prenup? Yes, it's ridiculous, and until this is fixed, you are going to see decreased marriage rates and decreased birth rates, because no man in his sane mind is going to want to marry someone and have a family when the laws are stacked so much in the woman's favour. So, hey, if you really want to help, then change the law. But for everyone else, for everyone who actually knows what's going on, best of luck, and until next time, as always, have a good one.